A high-profile legal case has sent shockwaves through the Christian community, as Robert Morris, the founder of one of America's largest megachurches, has been formally indicted on multiple charges related to misconduct involving a minor. If convicted, he could face a maximum sentence of 100 years behind bars. For decades, troubling signs were ignored while systems designed to protect the vulnerable failed. Now, this case has brought long-standing concerns to the forefront, raising difficult questions about accountability, institutional oversight, and the responsibility of faith leaders. When figures of spiritual authority fall, the impact is far-reaching, extending beyond individual victims to entire congregations grappling with betrayal and broken trust. According to court records, an Oklahoma grand jury handed down the indictment on Wednesday, March 12. The charges stem from alleged incidents that occurred in the 1980s, involving a 12-year-old girl identified as Cindy Clemisher. At the time, Morris was 21 years old. The prosecution has outlined multiple charges, including inappropriate conduct with a minor. If found guilty on all counts, he faces up to 20 years per charge, resulting in a possible century-long prison sentence. Legal proceedings are moving swiftly. On Thursday, an Oklahoma judge issued an arrest warrant for Morris, setting his bond at $50,000. Authorities have confirmed that he is expected to turn himself in by Monday and will be required to surrender his passport to prevent any risk of flight. Oklahoma Attorney General Gentner Drummond addressed the handling of Morris' impending arrest, stating that law enforcement does not anticipate making a high-profile public scene at his church or within his community. Instead, they expect a voluntary surrender to authorities in Osage County. As this case unfolds, its implications continue to stir deep emotions within the faith community. The need for justice and transparency has never been more pressing. The grand jury proceedings in the case against Robert Morris have drawn significant attention, with several high-profile witnesses providing testimony. Among those listed are Glenda Faulkner Woodruff, Lawrence Swicegood, a longtime spokesperson for Gateway Church, Thomas Lane, a former executive pastor at Gateway, televangelist James Robison, founder of the James Robison Evangelistic Association, and Agent Kelly Turner. Their testimonies mark a crucial step in unraveling a case that has been buried for decades. For 24 years, Morris was the senior pastor of Gateway Church, one of the most influential megachurches in the country. However, on June 18, 2024, he abruptly resigned following the public allegations made by Cindy Clemisher. His statement at the time acknowledged what he described as inappropriate behavior with a young lady during his 20s, an admission that vastly understated the gravity of the accusations against him. Despite his fall from leadership, the legal system is now catching up with him. While he built his ministry, Clemisher was fighting a decades-long battle to bring her truth to light. According to court documents and witness testimony, Clemisher's ordeal began on Christmas Day in 1982 in Hominy, Oklahoma. She was 12 years old when Morris, a 21-year-old traveling evangelist, was staying with her family. It was during this visit that the alleged misconduct began. This was not an isolated event. According to Clemisher's statements, the misconduct continued for years, creating a cycle of fear and control. She lived a double life, smiling in family photos while suffering in silence, withdrawing from friends, and watching her childhood slip away under the weight of trauma. Morris allegedly used intimidation to keep her from speaking out. "Never tell anyone about this because it will ruin everything," he reportedly warned her. This psychological hold remained until 1987, when at 17 years old, she finally gathered the courage to tell a close friend and her parents about the situation. Her confession led to Morris stepping away from ministry at Shady Grove Church, but only for 2 years. This brief absence was not a true act of accountability. Rather, it was a strategic retreat that allowed him to return and continue building his religious empire, while Clemisher was left to battle the lasting effects of her trauma. As Morris's influence grew, Clemisher's pain persisted. By 2005, she reached out again, this time seeking help with therapy costs to address the deep emotional wounds left by her childhood experience. But instead of receiving compassion from the man who built his reputation on preaching about redemption and healing, she was met with a concerning response. In a leaked 2005 email, Morris responded with a veiled legal threat, telling her, "My attorney advises that if I pay you any money under a threat of exposure, you could be criminally prosecuted, and Debbie and I do not want that. Debbie and I really do care for you, and we sincerely want God's best for you. You see the blessings God has poured out on my life and conclude that it is because I have hidden my past. God does not work that way. He will not be mocked by deceit. I confessed my sins to you and your family 18 years ago, and I have continued to share it with those who need to know, as per counsel of your father. I thought I obtained your forgiveness as well as your family's. If you desire to make this public, I am also willing to do so." While Morris and his wife Debbie wrote that they really do care, he refused any assistance unless Clemisher agreed to sign a non-disclosure agreement, NDA. This response mirrored what many survivors experience: a system that often fails them, coupled with powerful individuals using their influence to silence those speaking out. For most survivors, statutes of limitations prevent criminal charges from being filed decades after an offense. However, Clemisher's case found a rare legal pathway forward through Oklahoma's Title 22, Section 22-153. This law essentially pauses the statute of limitations for individuals who are not legal residents of Oklahoma. Since Morris never established permanent residence in the state, the countdown on the statute of limitations never officially began. This legal technicality, combined with Clemisher's unwavering determination, ultimately led to Morris' indictment after nearly 43 years. Following the indictment, Clemisher issued a powerful statement. After almost 43 years, the law has finally caught up with Robert Morris for the harm he caused me as a child. The Oklahoma Attorney General, Gentner Drummond, revealed that prior to the indictment, there were negotiations between Morris's legal team and Clemisher regarding reimbursement for therapy costs. Instead of acknowledging wrongdoing, Morris' team reportedly blamed Clemisher for what happened, stating she was the aggressor. She seduced him. This victim-blaming strategy, common in high-profile cases, only further fueled public outrage when the leaked 2005 email resurfaced. In it, Morris once again reiterated the threat of legal consequences if Clemisher pursued financial assistance. Now, with Morris formally indicted and facing up to 100 years in prison, the case represents a landmark moment not just for Clemisher, but for survivors of abuse in faith communities everywhere. Robert Morris' claim that he had the blessing of Cindy Clemisher's father to return to ministry has been strongly refuted by Clemisher herself. In an interview reported by the Wartburg Watch last June, she stated, "My father never, ever gave his blessing on Robert returning to ministry. My father told him he was lucky he didn't kill him." This stark contradiction exposes a deeper issue: how powerful church systems have historically shielded spiritual leaders from accountability. Time and time again, we have seen institutions prioritize their reputation, financial stability, and public image over the suffering of the vulnerable. When wrongdoing occurs within the church, is the response one of transparency and justice, or is it a calculated effort to control the narrative? Was there a deliberate attempt to suppress the truth, to silence voices crying out for justice, all in the name of preserving an institution's authority? With grand jury witnesses, including a former executive pastor and the church's own spokesperson, the question becomes unavoidable. Was Gateway Church engaged in a cover-up, or were they genuinely seeking truth and righteousness? Did those in power take real steps to address the accusations, or did they sweep them under the rug, hoping time would erase the past? How many people in leadership knew about Morris's past and yet allowed him to continue preaching, ministering, and influencing thousands? This case is not just about one man. It is a reckoning for every faith institution that has chosen silence over justice. It forces us to examine the role of churches and religious organizations in either perpetuating cycles of harm or becoming places of healing and restoration. How many other churches have turned a blind eye to wrongdoing, allowing harm to continue under the guise of grace and redemption? How many survivors have been left voiceless because confronting the truth was deemed too costly? As followers of Christ, we must not only grieve for the pain inflicted, but also act to ensure that these failures are not repeated. We must pray fervently for Cindy Clemisher's healing and for all survivors of abuse within the church. But prayer alone is not enough. Scripture commands us to be doers of the word, not just hearers, James 1:22, Faith without works is dead. James 2:26. If we claim to stand for righteousness, we must demand accountability from our spiritual leaders. We must advocate for transparency, justice, and safeguards that prevent such betrayals from happening again. Faith communities should be sanctuaries of safety and healing, not fortresses where the powerful are protected while the wounded are cast aside. The time for silence is over. The time for action is now. If you found this discussion thought-provoking, please like, share, and subscribe for more content on faith, truth, and justice. Together, let us stand for righteousness, accountability, and healing.